Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Sydney Dustin, and I am an intern here at Create Better Health. I have been working on some accessibility projects over the past couple of months for my summer internship. And so just here to present a little bit about what I've learned through my research and just like a couple starting points to get everyone started on accessibility. So let's see. Okay. So I'm going to start with just talking about a little bit about accessibility and why we need it in Create Better Health. And then I'll go through preparing for an accessible class. And then lastly, we'll talk about conducting accessible classes. Okay. So I just found this quote while I was reading through some articles. I thought it was a good overview of what accessibility actually is. So it says accessibility is giving equitable access to everyone along the continuum of human ability and experience. So this is kind of just planning and executing nutrition education with regard to physical and mental disabilities. And to me, this is kind of the part that is required by the law. So we all have heard of the ADA. This is what makes us compliant, is having those regards for disabilities within our classes. The next part of accessibility, I feel like, is inclusivity. Inclusiveness is creating content that is mindful of a broad range of users, their abilities, environments, situations, and contexts. So this part to me is kind of part of accessibility that is not required by law. It's kind of just doing those things to make other people feel more comfortable in coming to our classes and being able to learn with us. And this does require thinking outside the box and finding ways to make everyone feel comfortable. So treating each person like an individual. What is their context? What is their situation? And what makes them unique? And how can we make this a more comfortable learning experience for them regarding all of those things that make them unique? Okay, so moving on. Why should we worry about accessibility? What's the reason? So there's obviously a couple of reasons. The first being it is a law. So in Title II of the ADA, American Disabilities Act, it covers government entities, which Create Better Health is a part of a government entity. So it covers us. And the two parts of Title II just say, let's see, where is it? That we should try to provide availability for all and then provide reasonable accommodations. So those are kind of the two, the law is split up into two different parts, and those are kind of the two parts of that. And then the last part is accessibility is kind of just the right thing to do. It's the thing that provides education for everybody across the continuum of human experience, like we talked about a little bit earlier. So as I was researching, I kind of just looked into USU Extension's mission statement and then also Create Better Health's mission statement. So first we'll go back and read Extension mission statement, and just the end part there is what really caught my eye. The goal of improving the lives of individuals and families, or the goal of Extension, is improving the lives of individuals, families, and communities throughout Utah. And then Create Better Health has a similar one, of course, and it just says, the part that caught my eye on this one is Create Better Health is designed to increase the knowledge, skill set, and overall well-being of those it serves. So I found this pretty interesting. Obviously, we have all probably heard that before. But to truly fulfill these mission statements, it's important to make sure that every individual gets the resources that we have to offer, even if it means accommodating to different needs or different ways of going about the education process. So like I mentioned earlier, this will take some creativity. It probably will take thinking outside the box and coming up with creative solutions to ensure that everyone feels like they are getting the full extent of the nutrition education we have to offer. So, okay, going back to kind of, well, there's that. With the program so centered around people, accessibility and accommodation are necessity, kind of like I said earlier. So going back to the law, Title II of the ADA does say that we're required to provide reasonable accommodations. So when I first read that, I was pretty confused on what that meant. So with a little bit of research, I found kind of how it splits up into two different parts. So we have communication accommodations and then physical accommodations. So communication accommodations being the way that we present content to people and the way that we communicate with them. So a couple of these examples will be American Sign Language interpreters for people who require those, and then captioning services for videos, things like that. And another example just being providing accessible materials. So these materials could look like Braille services if they use Braille, and then also screen reader adaptable handouts, which I have also been working on this summer and should be ready to go pretty soon, I believe. So we'll have those to be able to give to participants that need them. Okay, and then the second part of the physical or reasonable accommodations would be physical accommodations. So these are things like parking spaces, restrooms, ramps to get into the building, indoor maneuverability, so ways to get around things, and things that are wheelchair accessible. So that is physical accommodations. So, and those are kind of the two that are covered under reasonable accommodations. So now we'll kind of talk about this in context of preparing for actual classes and teaching them. So I made a list, a checklist that's available, should be available soon, that has all of the things to kind of look for when you're finding a place to teach a class. So I'll just go over these ones really quickly since I do have that list that will be available for you to use. So just a couple examples that I found. So when you're looking outside the facility, is there accessible parking? So is there signs that have accessible parking spaces and wide enough to get wheelchairs in and out of the car? Pick up and drop off areas. So these kind of look like a place that somebody can stop, take a wheelchair out and put them onto the sidewalk, things like that. Accessible paths and paved that are paved and smooth. So making sure that it's not like up to the door, that wheelchairs or walkers or even people without one of those walking devices, but just have a hard time walking, making sure that they can all get up to the building appropriately. And then accessible doors or door opener for those people who can't open the door themselves in a wheelchair or things like that. Okay, and then inside the facility, having wide paths and routes clear of debris. So making sure there's a clear path to the classroom and an easy way to get there. And then elevator access if needed. So if there's a class to be held on the second floor, making sure that there's an elevator that's there and working. Wheelchair access, accessible bathrooms. Those are pretty obvious. Door opening has to be 32 inches wide. So that is required by the law. And then proper signage indicating where class locations are to be held. So just making sure that the classes are advertised properly so that people know where they're going. They know what class they're getting into, things like that. Okay, and then next is just kind of things to think about when you're inside the classroom. And again, these are all kind of on a little checklist type thing, so you can go back and look at them. So things to think about inside the classroom: space for service animals. If people need to bring service animals, they usually need a space next to them to let their animal sit throughout the class. ASL interpreters, there's usually 1 to 2 ASL interpreters if somebody needs sign language interpretation. So making sure that there's chairs set up for them and then a place for them to sit close to the person that will be using their services. And then making sure there's ramps or spaces for wheelchairs as well to get in and out of the classroom. And then kind of going back to the inclusivity part that's not technically required by law, but something to think about and make our classrooms just a more welcoming environment, is chairs with adjustable heights and without armrests, just so that they fit everybody of different sizes and heights and everything. And then also choosing rooms with larger chair seats or benches in the back or things like that, just so people have lots of options to make them feel the most comfortable. And then lastly, just checking for outlets for charging devices. So whether that's like a hearing device or a device they use for their screen reader handouts, Things like that will make everyone feel comfortable and feel like they were thought of when planning the event. So, okay. So we now have a phone number for clients to call and schedule resources. So we have it's here on the screen. I think this is Kristen's line. So they'll call, schedule whatever resources that they need with Kristen. And then Kristen will make that list. So when you are preparing for classes and getting ready for events and stuff, you'll be able to call Kristen or the state office and find the list of accommodations that they'll need for that certain class. So get in contact with the state office to find that list of scheduled accommodations. So kind of an example of what this would look like is someone with a hearing impairment or that would need an ASL interpreter would be able to call this number that's on our marketing materials. They would be able to set up this accommodation through Kristen, and then when you are preparing or scheduling classes, you will call and get that list and then know that there will be 2 ASL interpreters or something. And so then you'll be able to plan for that in classroom planning as well. Okay. So finally, let's kind of talk about what to think about when you're conducting a class and how to make that class a little bit more accessible. So the 4 main points that I kind of thought of while I was researching all of this is presentation, position in the classroom, and then just the visuals of your class, and then class members. So we'll go through each of those real quick. So the presentation part, making sure that you're using clear visual aids. So that is like bright colors that contrast, they're highly contrasting, so they're easy to see, and then large print so they can see them from far away or from close up if they have a visual impairment. And then the creative side of this is, are you checking with everyone visually, making eye contact? Is everyone having an easier time seeing your presentation, things like that? Okay, and then position. So facing the audience, where are you facing? And where you're facing is where your voice is going to go. So making sure that you're facing the audience, the bulk of the audience, and then also using clear and engaging body language. So making sure that the signals that you're sending aren't too crossed. And then if available, or if you need one, using a microphone to make sure that your voice is heard throughout the classroom. Okay, the next is visual. So making sure that your videos and pictures are captioned so that people with a hearing impairment can see, understand what's going on in the videos, and then explaining thoroughly all of the pictures that are used. So there's a super easy tutorial online to look up how to do alt text. So you can write an alternate text, and then you can just describe that image during the class. And then another resource I was looking at said to use real pictures instead of clip art. And a lot of participants with learning disabilities are able to identify better with real pictures instead of clip art. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Okay. And then checking in with your class members throughout the class as well is important. So making sure to ask questions, checking in visually with all of them. Does anybody look confused? Asking questions and getting creative with the solutions. So, and then the last part of that is making sure that content is a 5th grade reading level. And that is kind of going to be the next step in curriculum, is creating everything in a 5th grade reading level so that people are able to understand it and learn it at the same level. So there's plenty of resources out there, lots that I found. So I think those resources, I made a list of those as well. I think they'll be available as well to go and look at and practice your skills, and then just increase your awareness of accessibility resources. And then if you do have any questions of anything I talked about or anything to add or I didn't cover, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to answer any questions. And yeah, so thank you for listening.